Video game bosses. They have always been one of my favorite things to play through. Many times I've seen myself buy games solely to play against them. Mainly Sans in Undertale and Gwyn in Dark Souls 1. For me, they're the highlights of the playthrough. I vividly remember these triumphs days after my victories, as they leave everlasting marks on the games. Many of them will lead me to name those games my all-time favorites. The following top 10 list will go on a factor of multiple criteria. For example, soundtrack, environment, build-up, the fight itself, the feel, and lastly, my personal enjoyment of the fight and victory. Another thing I want to mention is the games present on this list. They are Hollow Knight, The Binding of Isaac, Repentance, Dark Souls 1 and 3, Elden Ring, Undertale, and Omori. As every top 10 list maker would say, remember, this is only my personal opinion. My enjoyment of a particular boss shouldn't take away your hate of them. I'd be more than happy to discuss some placements in the comments. Number 10. Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy from Elden Ring. Rykard / God Devouring Serpent is another one of the many gimmick-based bosses present in FromSoft's repertoire. The special aspect of this fight is the weapon you use. It possesses a different effect once in the arena. This effect is basically the same as Zorn the Giant in Dark Souls 3. It grants a longer reach with a sort of wind attack. Although, this time around, it looks like FromSoft discovered a way to make this fight work even better than previously. So how does it work so well? Well, firstly, the developers added a giant pool of lava in all proximities of Rykard to force the player to stand far and let the lock-in feature work its magic. We get a zoomed out view to look at the phase 2 in all of their glory? To add onto that, the weapon was specifically designed to work in this arena, with its very long reach, with stabby R1 and slicing R2. The boss even gives you time in the beginning to properly collect your weapon and equip it, unlike Yorm. He only awakes when you get nearer and you're ready to fight. Furthermore, the moveset of Rykard is also perfectly made to keep you constantly on your toes to reposition and stay far. The slow hanging sword swipes, the skulls raining from above, and the serpent's lunges. Everything fits so well and together to make a perfect gimmick fight. It's not the greatest fight, but I enjoyed it through and through. Number 9. Dogma from The Binding of Isaac, Repentance. Now, I know, this may seem totally ridiculous after the 10th pick, but I truly love this boss and its soundtrack. This boss is part of the grand finale of Isaac. It represents the pure Christian ideology of the broadcast Isaac's mother watched before she went haywire. While we fight this boss, we hear the announcer in the background yelling multiple things like, as a player, I almost felt as if I was getting converted on the spot, right before I got blasted by a Dogma brimstone. During the first phase, Dogma is chained to the TV and unleashes multiple different attacks portraying the destructive effects of Christianity on the family. Like mentioned before, the brimstone for the yells. The static balls gives us sort of an overwhelming feeling. Another great aspect is a sort of mini bullet hell, where it sometimes glitches and alters the directions to keep us on our toes during each of its occurrences. During the second phase, we get a more erratic movement since it's no longer attached to the TV. It runs away constantly while flying, which also probably represents its ascension. Dogma shoots feathers this time around, and at times it almost feels like it's trying to strike me down from the heaven since it's flying. The fight as a whole takes place in the living room to emphasize the fact that Dogma is one of the reasons the family went through a meltdown. With a mix of great boss design and a perfect soundtrack to go with it, Dogma sits at a comfortable 9. Number 8. Absolute Radiance from Hollow Knight. When I first started playing Hollow Knight and started to obtain every ending, I thought the Hollow Knight was pretty hard. Then I learned about the Radiance, which became the new hardest thing, while the Hollow Knight became more of an annoyance. But then, I truly learned about the true final boss, the Absolute Radiance. And that was the hardest thing. This buffed up version is like comparing a little fire you made outside to the literal sun. The difficulty is a night and day difference. Team Charlie really went all out to make a boss worthy of its final version. She's not only faster and has more difficult patterns to learn, but she's also gatekept from you in the hardest gauntlet in the game, the Pantheon of Hollow Knights. To even get the chance to practice her in the Hall of Gods, you'll need to go through every single boss you've beaten through the game, even the new ones introduced in the other Pantheons. Then you get to her. After defeating the Pure Vessel, she calls you up to the final floor to strike you down herself. The exhaustion the player feels at that point is immeasurable, and is only there to make the fight harder, but you cannot keep your guard down, as she will appear. As you make it through the fight, you can see her light starting to dim. You're imposing fear onto her. As you finish the second phase, she barely escapes to her platforms. This is the hardest phase. It truly tests your patience. You need to wait until the best possible time to attack, or she will punish you. As you start climbing up, she rains down fire until you reach her. The tension is at its peak. 45 minutes of work. All comes down to this. You and her. A slugfest. The music also intensifies that feeling. When you finally beat her, you get to smack her down just like she tried a couple minutes ago. It's your turn. Number 7. Omori from Omori. There are not a whole lot of bosses that will break me emotionally, but Omori managed to do it. Never have I felt such confusion, despair, sadness, and just a mixed amount of emotions in my entire life. This boss is the impersonation of Sunny's suicidal thoughts. He's fighting to stay alive. Throughout the game, Sunny and Omori is the silent one. He never really says anything. We as a player don't even have access to his mind. We have a third-person view of him and his friends whilst being able to control him. We just never know how he feels. Just leaves this weird kind of attachment towards Sunny. We love him since we play as him, but in a way, we're just observers of his daily life in the dream world or real world. We know that he has a secret and Mary has something to do with it, we just don't know what. When we learn what really happened to her and we face it with Sunny, we just now start to build a stronger bond. We piece together what happened with him, and we're reliving this traumatic event with him. Gathering the photos off the ground and placing them in the album, we just know something is happening. We just don't know the full details yet, nor will we ever know. If we ignore the files where we can see some context of the Polaroids representing this event, we only have the pictures, leaving us players to have to piece everything together. That moment of realization will always be something big for me. But that's when Sunny decides to face his inner demon, Omori. This facade of himself was built to protect Sunny from the truth and keep him away from it. But now that he's found it again, Omori only has one thing to do: kill him. The words he says are chilling. Things like, "You're selfish," and "It would be better if you would just die." It shakes you to your very core. You're fighting off the urge to kill yourself. You need to fight it off to survive and keep going. So to finally defeat it, you have to replay the song that started this whole thing off. You finally play the duet you and your sister were meant to play all that time ago. You'll forgive yourself, won't you? Number 6. Artorias from Dark Souls 1. Dark Souls 1 is one of the games I hate and love the most. I despise the first half without fast travel. And I understand it is to build a world, and I get that. I just don't like it. After that comes Jank and Smell. I think I would like that fight a lot more if it weren't for that crappy dash that Ornstein makes during the fight, which can totally glitch on different hitboxes. But enough of that, let's get to Artorias. Artorias was one of Gwyn's best knights, being left-handed, having a great shield, and fighting alongside Sif. He was tasked to kill the Abyss in Ulasil, but unfortunately, he failed and got consumed by it. So now, he's almost like Gwyn, reduced to a mere shell of what he once was because of an outer circumstance. Knowing this going into that fight made it way better for me. Knowing his lore just built onto the atmosphere already created by the surroundings. Plus, I had watched a lot of tier lists before saying that he was the second hardest boss in the game. I was ready for the duel of a lifetime. The fight delivered. With an erratic stance and weird combos keeping you on your toes during the fight, I never felt truly safe to heal unless I had a clear opening. He was jumping, dashing, and swinging all the time. And did I mention he fought us with his right arm? His bad arm, since his left one was broken. So not only was he weakened by the Abyss, but he was fighting us with his weaker and slower arm. Exceptional. Even though I defeated him on my second try using the Black Knight Halberd, I still felt like it was a genius duel and an extremely well-made fight. I wish I could press a button to instantly refight him. Number 5, Nightmare King Grimm from Hollow Knight. Nightmare King Grimm will almost certainly overwhelm the player at first. He's like what Absolute Radiance is to the Radiance. He's way faster and does double damage. He appears after you defeat normal Grimm, which is already a pretty tough fight for the mid-game. So if the player tries to fight him now, they'll most certainly get destroyed immediately. By the way, this is all ignoring if you banished the troop before. Once a player finally returns to NKG, they'll most likely have near max upgrades, so they might stand a bit more of a chance, but they'll still probably die considerably fast. See, this fight is about learning each attack and how to position yourself accordingly. It's like how normal Grimm describes your fight with him, a dance. To complete a dance, you need to learn the moves or you'll just mess it up. You'll need to learn every attack and how to dodge and counter them to beat him. It's a dance to the death that I thoroughly enjoyed and go back to perform every time I replay some bosses. Yes, sometimes I need to get used to the moves again, but it's like riding a bike. You never truly forget. The soundtrack is another phenomenal aspect of this fight. It's almost like heavy rock. It intensifies the fight and makes your heart beat that much faster when you get close to beating him. This is also a fight that you cannot get greedy on. You can only get a certain amount of hits on every opening because he teleports away. It gives you a second or two to readjust. If you try to force it, you might get backstabbed. It's just another great duel. Number 4, Sisters of Battle from Hollow Knight. Sisters of Battle is another one of the greats of Hollow Knight. It's a remake of an earlier boss, the Mantis Lords. The boss consists of 3 mantises attacking you. It starts off with only one, and then the 2 others come in after the sister takes too much damage. This is another one of those fights which might seem impossible at first, since you have 2 enemies at once, but the duo synergizes very well to give you clear openings. For an early game fight, it's pretty tough but very much doable. But the later fight in President Godhome, it's a bigger spike, but a lot more fun. Instead of only 2 going after you during the second phase, they fake you out, and they all stand up and say, "Close up!" Then the real fight begins. Now, 2 is already kind of hard, but 3, oh boy. Those mantises are good fighters, who are able to duck and weave very efficiently. To defeat them, you'll need to do the same. You need to dash, jump, D-dive, and place yourself according to them. The fight follows a very good flow. It feels fluid and energetic. When the 3 sisters are fighting you, you won't have time to heal. You'll have to learn their patterns to survive this fight. Towards the end, when one of the 3 sisters returns to her throne, the fight might seem slow, but the beginning of the second phase more than makes up for it. It shows your evolution throughout the game. That the boss you once thought was very hard, well, is the easiest part of the fight. The flow is one of the best I've seen in any fight. Number 3, Malenia from Elden Ring. Malenia is a very controversial boss within the Souls community. Many agree that she is one of the best fights ever created by FromSoft, but only if you exclude the waterfowl dance. She's also viewed as the hardest boss in Souls history, primarily because of her lifesteal mechanic. This mechanic impacts every player, even shield users. When she hits you, whether you have a shield up or not, she will get some of her HP back from it, making it very easy to lose 5 attacks worth of damage in 5 seconds. She's a very punishing boss. Although, all of those reasons are why I love her so much. She almost plays like a player, seemingly aggressive when you are, and passive when you are as well. But this changes during the second phase. The first phase, I love. The second, a bit less, but I still like a lot. Her beginning is very consistent. All her moves are readable and very well made. But if you get too aggressive and push too much, she might take her ultimate weapon out, her waterfowl dance. Now, this attack is hard to dodge correctly. Once you learn it, probably through YouTube, it becomes one of the best attacks to dodge. You'll feel like a god after, and you get to even punish her. When the second phase kicks in, the soundtrack does as well. You feel the intensity, her power. You feel it blooming, just like she did moments ago. She's now way more aggressive towards you. She's the one in charge. but due to her lifesteal mechanic, she's way more dangerous. Most of her attacks also get an extra AoE added to them, adding some positioning to think of. Those extra AoEs also keep her down a bit longer, giving you time to get your hits in. Some annoyance is that her waterfowl isn't determined on if you're too aggressive anymore. She could pull it off at any moment. That adds another level of positioning, putting her even more in charge. Overall, a great fight that I've come close to no hitting, and I'm currently trying to do. Number 2, Sleep Knight Gael from Dark Souls 3. Where to start with Gael? Everything is great with this fight. The arena is literally the end of the world, and moveset is very well made, with some greatly delayed attacks, intense flurries, and solid and strong swings. The soundtrack is probably one of the best I've listened to, intensifying during the fight, and seemingly raising the stakes as the fight goes on. Gael needs you to take the Dark Soul from him, to give it to the painter, and he's your final test of the Dark Souls trilogy. It's not a coincidence that he's widely regarded as the best boss in Dark Souls 3 in pretty much any list made. He just represents this game so well and presents irony to the world. Of every dragon, god, or demon, 2 hollows, you and him are the only beings that remain. And what do? You fight. You fight to the death. It's the end of the world, and you two are the only ones who remain. Gael truly has it all, and is the perfect final challenge. He has the health of Medir, the moveset of First Phase Soul Sender, and the epicness of the whole series. He punishes early rollers with his cape that acts like an afterburner. He makes you truly learn his patterns, because his health bar sure as hell won't allow you to hit terrain with him. As the fight goes on, the intensity goes up, and lightning starts to rain down on you. They generally won't hit you, but if you don't pay any attention to your surroundings, they have a higher chance to catch you off guard and take you out of the rhythm of the duel. The soundtrack gets to the highest it's ever been and makes the fight go even harder. It's truly the peak of any fight FromSoft has ever created. With Gael defeated, you truly have experienced the Dark Souls trilogy and what's been leading up to. Amazing. Number 1, Sans from Undertale. Now, I know this might feel like a bit of a meme because he wants you to have a bad time, but unfortunately for him, I had a great time fighting him. Sans is kind of a god in this world. He's one of the 2 people who know you can come back and your power to reset the world. So because of that, he's gotten lazy. He doesn't want to try too much anymore because he knows that at some point it'll all go back to what it was, and he cannot control that. His only hope is to hold you back long enough in hopes that he will annoy you out of killing the rest of the world. During the fight, even though you're a murderer who's killed countless others, you start to remember each kill. He makes you think about them. Toriel, Papyrus, Undyne, Melaton, and now him. His attacks are intense, some of the hardest in the entire game. Instead of having a certain amount of damage done, he drains your health, and there are no invincibility frames to save you. Statistically speaking, he has the lowest amount of health, but he does one thing differently. He dodges. His end goal is not only to kill you once, but to kill you twice, thrice, and over until you lose your mind and give up. He's a literal gatekeep from the ending. He fully knows that if you pass him, it's over. So he gives everything he's got. He knows the mechanics of your UI, invading it with bones. He knows that it's a turn-based game and uses that to try to make you unable to end him. He never uses his turn to make you unable to continue, but you still find a way. His challenge goes beyond just difficult dodges. It's a full-screen fight instead of in the box like it's been in the entire game. Everything you knew about the game is about to be flipped on its head. In all the boss fights I've gone through, none of them have been more enjoyable than Sans. Even through all my losses, I loved every attempt at brutally murdering him. But when he leaves to go to grill buys, at the end and you just hear him wither away, I shed a tear. I truly realized what I had done. I killed the one man offering me some kind of redemption and trying to protect his world. Honestly, I don't know how I went this far without mentioning his soundtrack. Truly one of the best in this gaming. That first note, it's so iconic. Almost every fandom knows it even if they haven't played the game or even fought Sans. It's up there in the most iconic like All-Star. Sans is truly my favorite boss fight of all time. Making this list took a lot of thinking. I wanted to include bosses like Ganishiro and Ishin the Sword Saint from Sekiro, Pure Vessel from Hollow Knight, the Battle Lane encounter in Celeste, Gwyn or Sif from Dark Souls 1, or even Sweetheart from Omori. Alas, I still went through with my list because it's the one that feels right to me. You might disagree with me, and that's fine. Everyone has different opinions, and I'd love to hear them in the comments. But here we are. This has been my top 10 favorite bosses of all time. Thanks for watching.